your attention and attendance. We're going to call the Council Economic Development Committee meeting to order. I'm joined by my colleagues Nuri Martinez, Jose Huizar, and Gilbert Cedillo, who was here someplace. Okay, he's back here somewhere. We've got an overflow crowd, to say the least, and so we're going to ask that all speakers hold their comments to 1 minute so that we can do our best to accommodate all before the day is over. And we appreciate your cooperation. We're going to have public comment, and we're going to hear from our panel of economists, and there'll be an opportunity for the council members to ask questions, and then we will consider a motion. So without further ado, why don't we, Mr. City Clerk, would you call the...
Item number 1 is a joint report from the CLA and CAO and City Attorney report and ordinance relative to a proposed living wage for hotel workers in the City of Los Angeles and discussion of economic impacts.
All right, let's... Yeah. First up, Marilena Durazo, followed by where are my cards? Okay, followed by Suja Lowenthal, Gary Tobin, and Stuart Waldman.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. We want to celebrate our city's diversity, but we also want to do that when it comes to the paychecks of working people. There are 810,000 people who work within the boundaries of the City of Los Angeles that make less than $15 an hour. We think it's important, we did that through a study, we think it's important to make that number smaller. And that's why we are here today. Hotel workers are here today because they are part of a successful hospitality industry, and hotel workers are here today because with $15.37 an hour, they can provide for their families. When they can provide basic living needs for their families, they're going to also spend that in their local communities. That's good for all Angelenos. So we urge your support today. This is a reasonable proposal. It's been debated for 2 years. The time is now to vote and move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please let me ask you to restrain your clapping. It just takes time away, and minutes are time.
Gary Tobin, President of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, and I've distributed to you the statement I'm going to make and some attached materials from 2 of the studies. Attached to the letter are excerpts from 2 of the studies commissioned by the City Council on the hotel mandatory wage ordinance under consideration. These studies, as requested by Council President Wesson, document the results of similar ordinances pertaining to the LAX Hotel Hospitality Zone living wage that went into effect in 2008 and the Long Beach mandatory wage that went into effect in 2012. In both cases, the results are clear. The enactment of ordinances, these ordinances resulted in a pay increase and a loss of jobs. That's what our city can expect if this ordinance is passed. The unemployment rate in the City of Los Angeles exceeds 9%. This ordinance will not help. Thank you. I appreciate your time. The attachments are here, and I think they're self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Dr. Suja Lowenthal, Vice Mayor of the City of Long Beach. I also represent the 2nd District, which includes most of the downtown and the hotels and attractions that are at the heart of our tourist industry. I'm here in support of the proposal to raise the minimum wage for hotel workers in Los Angeles. I think it's critical that the 2 largest cities in the county address poverty in the largest low-wage sector. Our policy for hotel wages in Long Beach is citywide. It covers hotels with 100 or more rooms and includes restaurants inside of hotels. And like Los Angeles, Long Beach thrives on tourism. Before Measure N passed, we heard many of the same concerns from hotel owners that you will be hearing today. We were warned that hotels would be forced to pass costs on to guests, and that would hurt tourism. We also heard that hotels would be forced to close their doors and leave our city. Despite all the fears, I'm here to tell you that our hotels and tourist attractions have continued to thrive, and people are still visiting Long Beach. Additionally, Measure N has brought thousands of dollars back to our local economy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Stuart Waldman, president of Vica. For months, we have shared our deep concern with the city's proposed hotel minimum wage, especially the assertion that our hotels all benefit equally from the city's tourism efforts. The Valley is not downtown. The Valley is not the West Side. The Valley is not the LAX corridor. Our hotels do not host the same conferences. We don't host the same weddings. We don't have the same clientele that other areas do. And we do not have the same occupancy rate. Valley hotel owners have repeatedly told Vica that if this ordinance is passed, they will have to cut employee hours. They will cut staff entirely. They will reduce many of their amenities that currently make them competitive with our neighboring cities of Burbank, Glendale, Calabasas, and other areas. City leaders have said that our hotels can just raise their prices, but that is not the case. We are disappointed that our leaders are choosing to shove this ordinance through so quickly when the reports were given yesterday. I ask you to take the time to actually read the reports and let other people analyze those reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got Dee Taylor, Veronica Perez, Jeff Zoringham, and Bora Chung.
Hi, my name is Dee Taylor. I'm the president of Unite Here. We, here in Los Angeles, we represent workers from LAX to Disneyland to Dodger Stadium to the Beverly Hilton. I think there's really three questions you have to ask yourself here. Why LA? Well, that's easy. LA leads America. You did the exact same bold move with the living wage ordinance at LAX in the 90s. LAX has flourished and thousands of workers have had a better life. You did the exact same thing with the ordinance for Century Boulevard. Those hotels have flourished and workers' lives are better. And Raise LA will do the exact same thing in changing lives throughout this valley. And then finally this. Many people say, well, isn't $15.37 too much? Many of our folks already get that. But for a housekeeper who's making $12 an hour, cleaning 16 rooms for 8 hours, what that really means is that it would be $1.65 more per room. I don't think any hotel will be in jeopardy. I think they will flourish. I think our workers will flourish, and LA will lead the United States once again.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Veronica Perez, representing the Small Hotel Coalition for Jobs. Hotels in the 100-room range, independent, family-owned businesses. You'll hear from some of them today. We would be supportive of a policy that further increases the room threshold to 150. With any major policy change, there are going to be positive and negative impacts. The positives here are that many workers would have a better quality of life. If you raise the room threshold to 150, you will mitigate some of the negative impacts of job losses, protecting small businesses, which are the backbone of our local economy. Small hotels are differently situated and are far more susceptible to the negative impacts of a wholesale change to their wage structure. We ask that you increase the room threshold to 150 to help these local small businesses, which will already be subject to the upcoming statewide increases, as well as any local minimum wage increases that are adopted in the near future. Thank you very much, and thank you for the past in raising it to 125. We are so grateful for your efforts to protect small businesses.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Jeff Zarin. I'm President and CEO of Sarco Hotels, Inc., which owns the Hollywood Hotel in Hollywood. As a young kid, I was inspired by the Conrad Hilton story, and I knew I wanted to run a hotel one day. So as a teenager, I started to convert an apartment building my family owned into a hotel, room by room, with my own hands. Hollywood Hotel is still family-owned today. We have 130 rooms, and employ approximately 48 people. Hollywood Hotel is not a large hotel. We are not owned by a REIT. We do not have a corporate office in another state to shift funds from another hotel to cover our costs. Our operation starts here and ends here. I took a close look at the hotel list being circulated. The average number of hotels in the 100 to 200 room category is only 139 rooms. The average room number of hotels in the 200 and above room category is 456 rooms, with some hotels having over 1,000 rooms. I'm here to tell you that the 130-room Hollywood Hotel is not a large hotel, and the numbers I cite speak for themselves. If you move forward, please increase the room threshold to 150 rooms.
Thank you. Ms. Chung?
Hi, I'm Bora Chong. 8 years ago, my father and I invested our life savings and became the Ramada franchisees. Our hotel is 130 rooms and is located in Westlake, near downtown. We have 30 employees. I run the hotel with my husband, father, and my mother. We are 100% hands-on, working 7 days out of the week, 24 hours a day. I am very worried about the consequences if this increased wages apply to us. We already pay 10% franchise fees, and this additional cost will not be sustainable. As you know, we do not have enough hotel rooms near downtown to support our thriving convention center. We are pleased that with our location in Westlake, we can support this important economic generator. Hotels in the 100-room category will be important in filling the room gap to support the convention center, so please do not disincentivize this important hotel category. Another issue that is important to us is job opportunities for the youth. At this high starting wage, it's hard to offer this job to youth with little job experience. We respectfully request that you recognize that hotels of our size are not large hotels and increase the room threshold to 150. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. Tom O'Shaughnessy, Fernando Villa, Ruth Dawson, and Paul Rober.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Tom O'Shaughnessy, Region 3 Vice Chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. We are the elected body representing 2.6 million Democratic preference voters. We support the items advocated by Raise LA, an increase for LA's hotel workers. It reflects the Democratic Party priorities and platform nationally, statewide, and locally. In my 14 years at Walt Disney Pictures and Television, I worked in payroll, human resources, and finance. An increased minimum livable wage is better for the community, better for the workers, and not a negative for the business community. Our city's lodging industry has made a full recovery. The record of the LAX corridor has proven that. LACDP urges you to vote yes and move forward with this increase today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dawson?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ruth Dawson, and I'm an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, of Southern California, and my work focuses on reproductive justice and gender equity. The ACLU strongly supports the Raise LA campaign because basic economic rights are inextricably linked to civil rights and civil liberties, and because paid sick days and a living wage are important reproductive justice issues. It is not lost on us or our partners in the Raise LA coalition, including the California Latinas for Reproductive Justice, Hollywood Now, and East LA Women's Center, that a majority of the workforce in LA's hotels are women, and many of them are parents. Reproductive justice means being able to work and take care of your family. It means not having to choose between tending to the needs of a sick child and keeping the job that is crucial to your family's well-being, where you've often put in long hours and even years of your life. But for too many hotel workers, this has not been the case. Instead, if they need to take care of themselves or their families, their hours are docked, they're written up, they have less money to spend to put food on the table. The ACLU of California urges your vote on this issue.
Thank you for your comments. Fernando?
Yes. Hello, my name is Fernando Villa, and I represent the Highland Park Neighborhood Council, which voted unanimously in support of the proposal before you. We represent over 60,000 stakeholders who reside, own property, or conduct business in our neighborhood. Nearly 9% of our residents are employed by the accommodation and food service industry. Right now, preventing displacement of residents is a top priority for us because a staggering number of them cannot afford to live in the neighborhood and risk being pushed out. Simply stated, rents in Highland Park are going up, but wages are not. And if you attend one of our meetings, you will see and hear just how many of us are impacted by it. While I'm okay, many elderly and disabled neighbors across the street has informed me that she had to have her gas turned off because she couldn't pay for it and make her rent. To be perfectly blunt, our community needs the wages the proposed increase will bring to many of our residents. Our families need to keep a roof over their heads, and our small businesses rely on the same families for their existence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rober?
Yeah, hi, my name is Paul Rohr. I'm with Loeb & Loeb, and I'm here today representing a coalition that includes the California Hotel and Lodging Association, the Hotel Association of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, the Central City Association, and Vica. Earlier today, we submitted a letter detailing some of our concerns. The existing ordinance that's the law right now includes specific promises from the City Council regarding the process to be used before the living wage can be expanded from its current area around LAX. And the business community has relied on those promises. As the law is currently being processed, or this ordinance is currently being processed, and the proposed ordinance itself appeared to violate the city's commitment to procedural fairness that was included in the previous ordinance. It also appears to possibly violate constitutionally guaranteed rights and to create legal causes of action. Consequently, we would ask that the City Council take a little bit of time and follow the procedures set forth in the previous ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. Paul Trevino, Paul Verdinen, Carlos Montes, and David Garfinkel.
I'm going to start now. Carlos Montes, you want to go in that order?
That's okay. You're the first one up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Montes. I'm the president of Ball Heights Neighborhood Council. Ball Heights Neighborhood Council strongly endorses this proposal, and we urge you to move ahead with this plan today. The increase will have a tremendous impact on the community of Ball Heights. We represent over 80,000 residents in the city of LA, and our district is home to the second largest number of hotel workers in the city of LA, and they are involved in our community. Our workers are mostly Latino and immigrant. They work hard and they are barely getting by and at the risk of falling through the growing gap between what things cost and what people can afford. And our community, by the way, we shop and invest in our local businesses. Ball Heights is joined by 16 other neighborhood councils in the districts across the city who endorse Raise LA. Together we represent close to 800,000 residents in the city of LA. Increasing the minimum wage for hotel workers will not only help lift families out of our communities out of poverty, but it will bring a fair share of LA's profitable tourism industry back to our neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for your comments. Sir, you are?
My name is Paul Trevino.
Paul. Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm the general manager of a gastropub basically across the street at the base of the Doubletree by Hilton. We opened 5 months ago. I hired 45 people. It doesn't seem fair to me. You know, the margins in the restaurant bar business are very, very slim. It doesn't seem fair to me when my competitors don't have to pay this wage. I'm going to have to raise prices. It's the only way I can compete. And in doing so, I'm probably going to fail because people are going to go where it's cheaper. I think it puts an unfair burden on people who are inside hotels trying to do business and make a living. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Paul Verdoyen with Courtyard in Century City. I speak out today to express my deep concern about this ordinance that you're putting forth. Obviously, asking for a 90% increase from where wages are now is really unrealistic. We certainly can support a much more phased-in approach of living wage and would ask that you consider that. And I've sent most of you a letter so at expressing that as well. So I would hope that you would take the time, as other people have said, to look at the economic studies as well. They just came out yesterday. Take the time to read those. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. David Garfinkel. Pastor Q. Marine, Mayor Pam O'Connell, Julie Robley.
Go ahead. Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Q. Jean-Marie.
from the church, the Road Church in Skid Row. We are, like we like to say, a church without walls. We serve the densest population of homeless in the country and an additional 7,000 people who reside in subsidized apartments and welfare hotels. Many work and suffer from mental illnesses or substance abuse, but more than you would like to think, they are victims of economic downturn, misfortune that can happen almost overnight when people are living just above the poverty line. Very quickly, these folks lost everything. Now they rely on a network of services to survive. It is important that these services exist, but that is not an adequate plan for dealing with poverty. I can tell you this by experience. We can reduce poverty by raising the minimum wage in our largest low-wage industry. We can also make sure that as we develop new hotels to meet the needs of our growing tourism, hotels will offer good jobs to people who live and work in our city. Please support this proposal.
Thank you, Pastor. Mayor?
Hi, I'm Pam O'Connor. I'm mayor of the city of Santa Monica, and I felt it was important for me to be here today to tell you about our experience in our city of Santa Monica, where hotels are already paying a living wage. In fact, for the past few years, it's been standard practice to require a living wage in our development agreements, including a provision that workers make $15.37 an hour. This has included hotels of all sizes, providing all levels of services, including limited service hotels. Yes, we were warned that higher wages would undermine new development in the city and slow down our growth, but that has not been the case. Instead, development is robust in Santa Monica, and tourism and our local businesses are successful today as they've ever been. I believe that we can and we should take a regional approach to regional problems. A living wage in the hotel industry will help to alleviate poverty, establish uniformity in the market, and leave no one city at a competitive disadvantage. So please join us. Actually, let's join together in lifting the quality of living for so many people throughout our region by requiring a living wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Robley?
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Roby, and I'm the general manager of the Holiday Inn in Torrance. And believe it or not, we're part of the group of hotels that are included in this amendment. How many businesses do you think would be able to take a 70% increase in pay? As a previous speakers, I really want to have a living wage for my employees, but I'm very concerned about them. So when you're driving home today, think about the 12 employees at the Holiday Inn Torrance. They're going to have to be laid off after this is passed. I appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. Izia Gale, John Howland, Rabbi Kaufman, and Jose Ramirez.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ezra Gale with the Downtown Center Business Improvement District, a coalition of property owners representing 2,200 parcels over a 65-block area. Over the past 15 years, downtown has experienced positive economic growth in the hotel and hospitality industry. Much of this growth is the result of boutique hotels, which have taken advantage of the city's adaptive reuse ordinance to complete projects. Adaptive reuse projects are considerably more expensive compared with traditional ground-up construction. While new hotel construction generally costs between $250 and $300 a square foot, adaptive reuse ranges from $315 to $365. This difference in cost is a result of adaptive reuse projects requiring significant structural upgrades, new mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and the demolition and removal of hazardous materials such as lead paint and asbestos. In addition to these high construction costs, boutique hotels that use the adaptive reuse ordinance have greater employee costs, such as larger percentage of employees which are tipped, and a larger employee-to-guest ratio to create an intimate, personalized experience. In order to support these and continue incentivizing these projects, we ask that you exclude adaptive reuse projects from the hotel ordinance.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Howland, representing the Central City Association. The majority of economists commissioned by this council have found that the hotel living wage mandate will cost jobs and investment in Los Angeles. The impact on the city's economic engine, downtown, will be even more severe. The ordinance threatens our economic growth in several ways. Hotels will cut back on staff. New investment in hotels will be cut substantially, and the convention business will suffer because the city will not have the critical mass of hotel rooms that are needed. This job loss is not theoretical. These are real jobs that are badly needed in a city that is lagging the national economic recovery. CCA is also gravely concerned about the process that this council has adopted for considering this ordinance. The council made a commitment 7 years ago to not only commission economic studies, but to seriously consider them. We feel that 24 hours after the studies are given to you is not sufficient time to study them. We believe the best way for people to climb out of poverty is to create a robust economic environment to create jobs. We urge the committee to vote no on this proposal, and we strongly urge you to recommend moving the vote to the full council by 2 weeks as required under the existing ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Rabbi?
Rabbi Jim Kaufman from Temple Beth Hillel in North Hollywood. I've served the congregation for 40 years, and I'm proud that the synagogue reaches beyond its walls with its food pantry and counseling center to help the community. This coming Thursday morning in synagogues throughout Los Angeles, throughout the world, you'll hear this sound. It's called the sound of the shofar, and it's an alarm. It's a call to action. It's a call to require people to turn to others and alleviate poverty, pain, and suffering. The women and the men who work in hotels work hard at the hands of a very profitable industry, and they've earned their fair share. Without them, all of us know, no beds would be made, no fitted sheets tucked, meals served, or baggage carried. We must raise their standard of living. It's our best way of beginning to alleviate the poverty. Please, we urge you to move forward on this proposal today. Hear the sound of the shofar. Please pass this proposal.
Thank you, Rabbi, for your musical accompaniment. Jose.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Moreira Ramirez. I am a banquet houseman earning $18.50 an hour at the JW Marriott in LA Live. I am not here for myself. I am here for the thousands of hotel workers there who struggle like I used to. I started working when I was 14 years old. I've had a lot of low-wage paying jobs, delivering auto parts for $8 an hour, piling sandwiches at the Subway for the same. At the age of 26, a year and a half ago, my mom suffered a brain hemorrhage, passed away in the middle of the night. The glue that kept my family together was gone. My dad earning a minimum wage. Much of the responsibility fell on me. Funeral expenses, bills, caring for a 16-year-old brother. Thankfully, a few years before my mom passed away, I got the job I have now at the JW Marriott. If I didn't have this good hotel job, my family would have crumbled. But we did not crumble. I was able to keep my brother in a private school. He is now a freshman at St. John's University. That is the difference between $10 an hour and a living wage. I am not rich, but I can take care of myself and help my family. For that, I am proud. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please, asking that you curb your enthusiasm for the duration of the meeting at least. James Crank, Mark Beccadia, Robert Armando, and Mark Davis. Please come forward. Okay, Salvador Tello, Christopher Lamar, Nicole, Sarah Mitchell,
Good afternoon, Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to urge your strong opposition to this motion. While the Hollywood Chamber absolutely agrees that poverty in LA needs to be addressed, we think that this is not the solution. The change would have adverse effects not only on LA's vital tourism industry, but to the entire LA economy, despite its admirable intentions to lower the poverty rate. Approval of an industry-specific minimum wage aimed at LA's hospitality industry remains bad policy for the city. In light of the mayor's recent and simultaneous proposal for a citywide increase in minimum wage, the Hollywood Chamber asks that you oppose any further calls for an increase in hotel wage rates above and beyond what is established during the city's minimum wage process. While the Chamber appreciates that the city adhered to the public's repeated calls for additional studies, we are appalled to learn that the city contracted reports were just released, giving you guys less than 24 hours to consider it and giving council tomorrow 48 hours. We think that this is not the way you go about such a drastic change, and we ask that you let this process, again, coincide with the overall citywide wage and not have an industry-specific.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. Christopher Lamar speaking on behalf of the LA County Business Federation, representing 125 top business groups and over 260,000 business groups across the region. I'm here to express concern with the proposed living wage increase and briefly outline 3 precise concerns. First, we feel as though this proposal will force hotels to cut back on full-time employees, delay construction and improvement projects, and possibly close and foreclose the opportunity to further develop our region. Second of all, we're concerned that this will make hotels less competitive with our neighboring cities. And third, and really this is the primary concern, we feel as though this unfairly targets one industry. And given the prospect of the citywide minimum wage increase, we feel as though this specific industry wage increase is short-sighted and will single out one sector, and the increase goes well beyond the maximum proposed for the rest of the city economy. Hotels provide an integral role in LA tourism and contribute millions of dollars to the city's general fund each year. We thank you for your time, and we urge you to carefully consider the concerns of the business community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Beccaria. Good afternoon, Chairman Price and fellow council members. Thank you for letting me speak here. I'm very concerned about this draft ordinance. It just appears it wasn't properly vetted. The first paragraph says revenue per available rate. That's a term I've never heard of in the hotel industry. Then it references a rate of 111. That rate of 111 is a County of Los Angeles rate. If you pull out the City of Santa Monica and Marina del Rey subregion, which is 219, and then you pull out West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, subregion rate of 232, you have a rate which is well under 100 for the City of Los Angeles hotels. I think the ordinance should properly reflect that. If you think that we're just going to be able to raise our rates, we compete against other cities for business, especially conferences and groups. San Diego, Anaheim, will definitely take business away from us, and this is a big concern. It will definitely impact hotels. Our hotel is an independent hotel, so that's not a proper justification for large versus small. I question the legality of exempting union hotels and restaurants where giving a 71% increase to tipped employees. That's where the biggest effect would be. Employees that are making well over $20 an hour now will drastically hurt our restaurant, where we compete against local restaurants that wouldn't have to pay that to their employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is James Crank, and I am the owner of the Beverly Garland Hotel. We have 200 employees. Just this year, we added 50 more employees, and we intend to add another 30 the next year. We are an independently family-owned hotel. We receive no subsidies from the city. I'm opposed to 1537 because it wipes out my entire profit. My property would be in an unsustainable deficit. The only remedy to that would be to eliminate 30% of my workforce. Also, it would really do a terrible impact on the current employee benefits. As I've said before, the staff are the most important resource of a hotel. And for those reasons, we offer extraordinary medical, free meals, 401k with matching, subsidized hospitality education. The possibility of a closure of this business at a time where our employee satisfaction is at its highest would be a loss to my neighborhood, a loss of revenue to the city, a loss to all my vendors, and a loss of the community sponsorships that our hotel frequently does around our community. I urge you to reconsider 1325. We do believe it is sustainable. I think a fair wage for all businesses is the way to go and would be a success for the city. And I think 1537 is a great folly and will not have a good historical outcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Salvador?
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Salvador Tello.
Can you pull the microphone up a little close to you, sir?
Sí, bueno. Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Salvador Tello. Soy un busboy del restaurante Deli Crio, cerca en el Westin Hotel, cerca del LS. Okay. Por 9 años, Tuve que
Señor, un minuto.
My name is Salvador Tello. I'm a busser at the Daily Grill restaurant at the Westin Hotel on Century Boulevard near LAX. I earn $12.28 per hour.
Por 9 años tuve que trabajar 2 trabajos para poder mantener a mi familia. A veces trabajé 16 horas.
For 9 years, I worked 2 jobs to raise my family. Sometimes I would work 16 hours a day.
Cuando pasaron el salario digno del Century Boulevard, yo tenía 47 años. El aumento que recibí me permitió tener solo un trabajo y pude pasar tiempo con mi esposa, mis hijos y mis nietos.
When the Century Boulevard living wage passed, I was 47 years old. The raise allowed me to work only 1 job. I had time to spend with my wife, my kids, and my grandkids.
El trabajo del Concilio de Los Ángeles me cambió la vida. Ahora ustedes tienen la oportunidad de cambiar más vidas, la mía y de los miles de trabajadores más.
The work of the LA City Councils changed my life. Now you have the chance to change more lives, mine and 1,000 more out there.
Con un poquito más de dinero en mi bolsillo, espero poder disfrutar de cosas simples. Me gustaría llevar a mis nietos al cine, comprarles un juguete nuevo, un libro. Aún si esto parece simple, para mí sería un gran cambio. Muchas gracias.
With a little more money in my pocket, I look forward to simple things. I will take my grandkids to the movies on the weekend, buy them a new toy or books. And even though those things may seem small, for me, it will make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilman and woman.
Sir, can you pull the microphone up a little closer?
My name is Mark Davis, the General Manager of the Universal City Hilton. I'm here today to let you know that I believe economics works best when it's fair among all concerned, all businesses. Our hotel competes significantly. A significant part of our revenue is based on not only just the hotel revenue, but restaurant revenue and event revenue. And with this ordinance, it will pit us against unfairly our neighbors at City Walk, other hotels in the area, and will significantly impact and cause the loss of jobs. Yes, I understand there's argument in some reports that it will help those that do get the increase. What I'd like to have everyone do is look at the faces in this room and how I go back to face my people that I will have to lay off and send them down the road. There will be significant loss. Maybe a few hundred help, but several hundred will lose their jobs. I urge you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Price and committee members. Bob Amano with the Hotel Association of Los Angeles. 2 things. The reports have been out. The statistics are there. Please look at those carefully. There is a dollars and cents proposition to this, and it needs to be fair. It needs to be gradual. It needs to be considered. We always have been referred to as a unique set of circumstances or unique industry. But being unique, being able to make somewhat of an industry that held its economic vitality here in Los Angeles, that's not cause or that's not legal just to mandate someone to procure their wages. So the final thing is, the other comment that I heard in previous meetings is there used to be manufacturing jobs, there used to be this, there used to be that. Then why don't we come to getting those, there used to be's, and getting it back on, creating the opportunities, creating the jobs for a better economy that's throughout the city. Not just one specific industry, not just one set of people, not just one set of workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarza Mitchell, Michael Zarinsky, Murray Lowe, Mark Lewis,
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Charchinsky. I'm the chairman of the Hotel Association of Los Angeles, also the managing director of the Westin Bonaventure. We applaud the city for looking at fair wages for the city of Los Angeles. We respectfully request that you look at this for the entire city, just not one industry. I've been in the hotel industry my entire life. I started as a dishwasher, and I've worked my way up to a general manager. At no time did I ever think I would be sitting in this position. But with that said, the report just came out last night. Unfortunately, the City Council requested these reports back in July and only gave PKF and Beacon 2 weeks to prepare these reports. if this is what we need to do, I just ask for more time. I ask for time to look at the reports. We want to have fair wages. We have fair wages. A majority of our associates make more than $16 an hour, than $13 an hour, than $14 an hour. We just need a little more time to make sure we make the right decision for all the people in the city of LA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, Sarah Mitchell, Murray Lowe, Mark Lewis, Tom Breeden, Mike Chaffett, Michael Kapolius, David Garfinkel, Scott Mills, Ramin Kolaya, Sandra Diaz. All right, here they come. If your name was called, please come forward. Okay, sir, you are?
My name's Tom Beeden.
Tom? Okay. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Tom Beeden. I'm with the Residence Inn by Marriott, Beverly Hills. And like Michael, I too started out as a dishwasher, and I do thank God that I was given that opportunity to make $2.65. Obviously, it was quite a while ago. And my next job was a busboy, and I took that position because I wanted to make more money. And so I get this. I'm not opposed to raising wages. I'm not opposed to improving the minimum wage. I think it's good for everybody, but I don't think it's fair to single out one particular business. I feel very passionate about that. I love my employees, and my employees, I think you could survey them, they'd all love me too. And I think that it would be fair to phase this in, go with Mayor Garcetti's plan, and look at raising the minimum wage for all employees.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Sarah Diaz.
Hola. Mi nombre es Sandra Díaz. Soy buzzer en el Deli Grill, restaurante en el Westin del área del LAX. He trabajado para esta compañía por 4 años. Okay. Yo gano $12.28 por hora.
My name is Sandra Diaz. I'm a busser at the Daily Grill restaurant in the Westin Hotel on Century Boulevard near LAX. I've worked at this company for 4 years. I earn $12.28 per hour.
Soy madre, tengo un bebé de 1 año. Mi esposo trabaja en la industria hotelera también, y nosotros necesitamos cada centavo de nuestro cheque que hacemos para sostener nuestra familia. Casi todo de nuestros cheques se va en pagar renta, luz, agua.
I'm a mother. I have a 1-year-old son. My husband works in the hotel industry too. We need every cent we earn to take care of our family. Almost all of our checks go to pay the rent, the lights, phone, car, gas.
El precio de la comida, la gasolina y la ropa sigue incrementando, pero nuestro salario no.
The price of food, gas, clothes goes up, but our wages don't keep up.
Lo más difícil de ser pobre no es que no podemos comprar cosas, sino que estoy estresada.
The hardest thing about being poor isn't that I can't buy things, it's how it stresses me out.
Estoy constantemente preocupada de cómo voy a pagar mi cuenta de celular, y a veces me pongo a rezar para que no me vayan a cortar algún servicio.
I am constantly worrying how I'm going to pay my cell phone bill or praying they won't cut off my electricity.
Voy a trabajar día tras día con un peso en mis hombros. Quiero deshacerme de ese peso. Esta ley me ayudaría a no estar tan angustiada y ahorrar un poco más para el futuro de mi hijo.
I rush to work day after day, carrying the stress around like a weight on my shoulders. I want to put the weight down, to relax, save a little for my son's future. This law would help me do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Chaffett. I'm the general manager of the historic Mayfair Hotel. We are an independent hotel. We're individually owned. We do not have tremendous corporate dollars backing us up. We've made an investment in the community by purchasing this property. We're in the process of putting $13 million into a renovation program into the hotel. We don't enjoy a lot of the convention business as we're on 7th Street, some ways away. The economic impact of this increase would be devastating to us. As you've heard before, we've calculated already that we're looking at about 30% of the jobs that we currently have. We employ roughly 60 people, so somewhat in the area of 20 jobs we would have to let go immediately. We understand the dilemma that you face. We urge you to consider Mayor Garcetti's proposal. Look at that because it does not target one single industry, but in fact is spread out throughout the city and the county and will have a much greater economic impact than this proposal would have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ramin Kalahi, representing Mr. C Hotel and Lighthouse Investments. First and foremost, the people that work in our properties work extremely hard, and as such, we pay a lot higher than even the average hotel wage. We provide full insurance, a lot of training, and one of the things I want to point out is 4 items. One is, it was mentioned earlier, small hotels are different. The numbers and the operating expenses, there's a lot of sunk costs in the front desk, and so what's missing is in the Economic Roundtable report, it mentions 78% profit margin. I wish we had that big of a margin. It's more like 20 or so. And so when you add 75 rooms, so if you go from 125 to, say, 200, that's $3 million of revenue, and you still have same front desk, and you still have the same engineering. So the economics are something to be considered. Also, something to consider is we are on the border of Beverly Hills, and we compete with them, and we try to compete with them. We are a luxury hotel. We have invested millions of dollars, and so we ask you to consider those as mentioned in the Sorrel Neighborhood Council report.
Okay, thank you. Again, Sarah Mitchell, Murray Lowe, Mark Lewis, David Garfinkel, Michael Capuyas, Scott Mills. If you are here, please come forward. Last call. Last call. Sarah Mitchell, Murray Lowe, Mark Lewis, David Garfinkel, Michael Capuyas, and Scott Mills. No other cards? All right, that will then conclude our public testimony for today. Let's call up our panel of 3 economists who prepared reports for us from the Beacon Report, PKF Report, and the Economic Roundtable. Gentlemen, if you'll come forward. And let me ask you to identify yourself. And
there's 2 of us from the Economic Roundtable. I'm Daniel Flaming.
Okay.
Chris Thormer, Beacon Economics.
Bruce Bolton from PKF Consulting.
Okay.
And Patrick Burns with the Economic Roundtable.
All right, great. Okay, gentlemen, why don't you begin? Let's take Beacon first.
I've got it set up. You
Okay, why don't you set up?
Yeah.
We'll go to PKF.
Okay. Thank you very much. Basically, in our report, we addressed the 7 questions that were presented to us by your committee and tried to answer each of the questions specifically. Basically, in terms of the hotel labor force, We estimated, one question was, are there more than 15,000 employees in the hotel industry? We estimated, based upon data that we analyzed, that there are about 17,000 employees roughly in the Los Angeles hotel industry, although it should be pointed out that includes the whole industry, including hotels with less than 125 rooms. But we don't have the data to break out separately what percentage that might be. In terms of the impact on the city economy, the number of hotel employees, basically the 17,000 employees in the industry and the number earning less than the minimum wage of proposed minimum wage of $15.37 an hour, we estimate would be less than 1% of the labor force in the Los Angeles city economy. So we don't believe that this group as a whole has a significant impact on the economy of the overall city of Los Angeles, although it obviously does for individual workers, and I understand that. And in terms of the hospitality enhancement zone ordinance and other ordinances that have been passed, whether it be Long Beach, LAX, CTAC, or the proposed San Francisco measure, we found that there is basically an impact to the industry. And one of the things we tried to point out in our report is, unfortunately, there's a very distinct difference within the labor force discussed, which is basically tipped and non-tipped employees. The ordinance would apply, because of state law, obviously, to tipped employees as well as non-tipped employees. And what tends to happen what has happened in Long Beach and the LAX is that there were jobs lost, but more of the jobs lost, frankly, were the tipped category than the non-tipped category. Just because of the nature of the labor force, it's easier for a hotel to adjust its hours of operation and services in its restaurants and banquet operations than it is to housekeeping. Obviously, you need a housekeeper, and you need to clean it.
Sir, are you referring to what's on the screen?
No, this is my presentation.
That's his
I apologize.
I don't have a presentation.
And I should have clarified, we've got three reports. One, the Economic Roundtable you'll hear from was recommended by Labor. PFK report recommended by the Chamber interests, and they both agreed upon the Beacon report, or at least they agreed upon the selection of the Beacon consultant for a report. So we're reviewing those three reports, Labor, Business, and then the one that was agreed upon by both. Okay, thank you, sir. Proceed.
Okay, so basically the bottom line of our report is that the ordinance as proposed will certainly have a positive impact on a certain portion of the labor force, which is primarily more the housekeeping area than the other area. The hotels will have a positive impact. But unfortunately, it will also have a negative impact in that employees will lose their jobs, and primarily those are the tipped employees, frankly, who are making a good living. Because right now, if they're paid at, let's say, $8 or $9 an hour plus tips, many of them are earning well in excess of $50,000 a year. However, the cost to the hotels of raising their wage from $8 or $9 an hour to the $15 an hour you're talking about in an area where food and beverage operations in hotels make generally between a 15 to 20% profit margin, they're not that profitable. It's a more costly part of the operation. So as a consequence, many hotels in Long Beach and other areas where this is passed have taken to cutting down hours of operation, cutting labor force, basically cutting out hours of room service, and cutting down on banquet operations. And that will be the impact here as well. So you will get obviously a positive impact to a certain portion of the labor force, but a negative impact to others. And that is our conclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want me to go next?
Are you ready?
I am. Let me go ahead and get this guy. I have to focus here just a little bit. That'll be okay. There we go. It's a little far. No, it's okay. I'll figure it out. I think we'll figure it out. As noted, I'm sort of in the middle on this particular issue, and I should probably start off by saying that, in general, as an economist who've looked at these issues, I am not opposed to minimum wages by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I have been strongly in favor of, for example, raising the minimum wage at the state level. Be that as it may, I do think that there are some issues here that we need to pay attention to, and ultimately I think that any kind of decision needs to be based on what I would call good data or good analysis. And unfortunately, I think in a lot of cases we're missing some of the primary points a couple of them that Bruce just brought up. Obviously, there were 9 questions in the report. I'm going to go through these very quickly, the first few, because I think there's 2 we really need to focus on. Questions, of course, 1, 7, 8, and 9 were really wrapped around data issues. And the data we provided, indeed, we can make this available to you on a spreadsheet. One of the main questions was, is there less than 15,000 workers who will be impacted by this particular resolution? The answer is yes. Indeed, by our calculations, because we do have some data within the city of Los Angeles where we can actually break hotels down by size. And by our estimates, there are about 13,500 workers who would fall underneath the statute. With the new hotels coming online, over the next 3 or 4 years, we expect that to be about 1,000 more, depending on what happens in terms of the minimum wage increase. But that would still leave it under 15,000. There also is a question about the Regional Tourism Board, which I'm not even sure if you want me to get into at this particular point in time. We can certainly, that was addressed in our report, so I can leave that to one side. We'll talk about that later. As for 4, 5, and 6, there were some questions regarding, of course, the other proposals that have been out there, have been put in place, mainly Seattle and San Francisco and Long Beach. A couple of things I want to keep into account when we start thinking about Seattle versus San Francisco. One of the things to keep in mind is both in Seattle and San Francisco, they are rolling this into place at a much slower pace than we are here in the city of Los Angeles. It's a broader statute. And for example, the case of Seattle, could you move the screen over just a little bit, because you cut off the left, which is kind of the important side. In the case of Seattle, for example, they do make an exception for hotels that provide health care for the workers. That might be something you might want to keep into account. If a hotel is willing to provide additional benefits, they ought to be given the benefit of being able to not have to meet this new higher threshold in terms of wages. Something to think about. But most importantly, when you're looking at Seattle or San Francisco, I also want to point out that you're talking about extremely different economies. Los Angeles, of course, is an area that has substantially larger with substantially lower incomes, and of course we have a much higher share of low-skilled workers. This is important largely because it means that when you think about San Francisco or Seattle, there's a lot more resiliency to these sort of statutes than there is here in Los Angeles. The potential employment impacts would be much more substantial here. There's something to keep in mind. And again, we have some data there in terms of some of those numbers. Question 2 and question 3, I think, were the bulk of this particular report. Question 2 asks a fundamental question, which is the number of employees being paid less than a living wage so substantial as a significant negative effect on the city economy as a whole? Now, you've heard the numbers, of course. You look at the basic data that comes out of the American Community Survey. It says that your average worker in the industry makes about $14.20 an hour, about $28,000 annually. This is 60% of the average hourly wage for all workers in the economy. 2/3 of these make less than the proposed living wage. So from that perspective, you look at this and think, well, this is a good deal. Here's the problem. This data is wrong. You know, when it comes down to looking at hourly wages, we always rely on the American Community Survey. It's the only data available. It gives us individual information, how many hours you work, how much you earn. That's all well and good, but there are known problems with the American Community Survey. And when you hold these up against even basic other metrics of income, you start to realize quickly that this data is very flawed. And in fact, overall, the income prospects within the hotel industry are actually much higher than this, something on the order of 15 to 20% higher, depending on how you want to count it. Let me give you some ideas about what's going on here. For example, according to the American Community Survey, your average worker makes $28,000 in the hotel industry here in Los Angeles County. Yet if you go to the QCEW, which is another data set, doesn't allow you to go worker by worker, but it's based on actual payroll records that have to be submitted in the context of unemployment insurance, that's accurate numbers. It doesn't get any more accurate than that. It turns out that according to the QCEW data, actually your average employee in the industry makes $32,500 per year, which is about 18%, 17% higher than what is claimed by the ACS. And of course, both these sources miss all that tip income that Bruce is just talking about, which is a substantial portion of income, particularly for folks in the banquet, waitering, bartending, valet parts of the overall hotel. As such, we have to keep in mind that there's a lot of folks here making more money than these overall disparate statistics would take into account. Another bit of evidence just comes from the distribution of hourly wage. On the upper right-hand side, I give you, again, this is directly from the American Community Survey. We pulled this straight out, and this is the distribution of wage. Well, according to the data we have for 2012, remember in 2012, the minimum wage in the county was $8 per hour. Well, according to the ACS, approximately 25% of workers in the hotel industry were making less than the mandated legal minimum wage in the state of $8 an hour. Well, candidly, that doesn't make any sense. If you really want to help these workers and you think this data is real, I suggest you hire a class action lawyer, because that would be the way. That would be the way to do it. But of course, this data isn't correct. There's a known bias. People tend to overestimate their hours and underestimate their income. Hence, it biases all this data down. Something to keep in mind. Another thing to think about here is, again, we hear a lot about the individuals who have to support a family on this individual income. That does not represent the average hotel worker. The average hotel worker in Los Angeles County, individually, this is ACS, so it's too low, but according to the ACS, earns about $26,000 a year. Yet the median household with that worker is earning about $60,000 a year, because there tends to be additional sources of income for your average worker there. So again, the point here being that while I'm sure there are some people in the hotel industry are clearly on the edge of the economic abyss. There's no argument about that. The overall data suggests the situation isn't nearly as bad as much of the people who go into this tend to bring it up. Another thing to keep in mind, this is not a dead-end industry. There are career ladders. For example, if you're thinking about this data, take into account the lowest wages are earned by the youngest people. As you work in the industry longer and longer, your wages tend to go up. It's older workers who make the most, so if you're in the industry for a while, you learn your skills, you get advanced in the job, you get pushed into better jobs. Same thing with part-time versus full-time workers. And perhaps most importantly has to do with wages relative to the size of the hotel. What's interesting, of course, is most of this conversation is about making larger hotels have a higher minimum wage. Yet the higher hotels pay a substantially higher income on average than the smaller hotels do. Indeed, according to the QCW data, the average wage for a hotel with less than 100 employees, that's approximately 125 rooms, is about $27,000 a year, where at more than 100 employees, you're looking at about $36,000 per year. It's a substantial increase, yet the small hotels are being exempted, where the large hotels are the ones being focused on in this particular debate. To me, that seems like we're missing the target at some level. And then, of course, last but not least, the last question, the third question, was about the airport. And yet again, because of my work with the LA Chamber having to do with the City Council report, we have been privy to some underlying data of what's happening here in the city of Los Angeles. And I hope that you can appreciate that we're pulling this out of the data. As you can see here, I'm showing you occupancy rates and RevPAR statistics for the airport relative to the county going back to 2005. That statute went into place roughly 2008, early 2009. Now, of course, we did have the recession and there are things that bounced back. And if you look at the airport from either an occupancy standpoint or a RevPAR standpoint, it's pretty clear that the airport hotels have not suffered. They continue to prosper. They're a great location. They're next to airport. That's all good news. It would suggest that there won't be that big of an impact. But the real issue comes when you start looking at underlying data. Here on the left-hand side is average annual wages for both the LAX area as well as the overall county of Los Angeles. It is true prior to the enactment of that proposition, minimum wage, that workers around the airport made less, and indeed that minimum wage boosted their wages. They're now earning more than the county overall, although interestingly, not by as much as you might think. Indeed, it's only gone by about, they went from a couple percent below, 4 or 5% below, to 3 or 4% above, so about 8% swing. But on the other side of it, look what's happened to employment. And this data is directly out of a sample of 11 hotels that we pulled from the LAX area, and you can see the numbers. Overall employment in hotels for the county today, for the county today, is approximately 12% higher than it was pre-recession. For the airports, it's about 10% lower. They have not bounced back. They have not done the employment. Candidly, for the reasons that Bruce was talking about, they have been cutting back on various sorts of services down at the restaurant industry. So what this says is, yes, there will be a wage impact, but that wage impact will come at a loss of jobs. And it's very clear that that's exactly what's happening down by the airport, something else to keep in mind. So if I had to conclude, I think the answer is this. Do we need to do something about wages in LA? Absolutely. Is this the appropriate solution? I'm not sure. I feel like we're aiming at the wrong target. I think we're overstating the actual negative situation that exists among hotel workers, and ultimately we have to keep into account the jobs impact in an already distressed labor market. You add it up, and I think that we need to think a little deeper about this particular decision before you move forward. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Economic Roundtable.
Yes, thanks for inviting us back today. So we wanted to kind of lend our voice in question one in regards to the consensus about the number of employees working for the City of Los Angeles hotel industry. Our estimate is that it is over 17,000 workers and kind of meets that threshold as laid out in the LAX statute. And the important thing about it too is that there's a significant number of these workers that are earning kind of low wages as well. That we have a significant number, well over half, that are kind of currently under that $15.37 an hour wage threshold, and this is coming from employer-reported data that comes through the state rather than ACS. The approximately 80% of these households are kind of earning less than $50,000 per year that these hotel workers are living in. And so to us, this constitutes that it does represent a significant industry that should come under the purview of the City of LA's ordinance and kind of making improvements in this industry. Now, when we take a look at our own analysis of the LAX earlier enhancement zone that went into effect back in 07-08, we did find, we actually took two looks at that in our data. Back in 2010, we carried out a report for the city attorney's office, I think it was, taking a look at rises that happened just after it went into effect, and found that actually wage rates in the zone actually jumped up significantly, as would be expected with a mandated wage increase in that area. It was 29% wages within the zone, whereas the city as a whole kind of only increased about 5%, and so that was a very significant positive effect. Looking more recently in 2013, with our kind of most recent report, Repaying Hospitality, we had an opportunity to kind of look at those wages, and still they were up significantly compared to when the ordinance went originally into effect. It was about 15% higher at that time, just last year. And so the employment situation is that, which has suffered, in response to the recession, similar to hotels around the rest of the city. But the good news is that wages have improved there, and it continues to be kind of a strong and vibrant hotel corridor for the City of Los Angeles. Now, comparing to some of the other ordinances that are out there, I think this is an area that maybe not hit upon as much by the prior speakers, but it's interesting to compare some of the similarities and differences between some of the ordinances that are out there already compared to what the City of LA is currently considering. Some similarities is that the wage level is actually very similar. So despite the City of Los Angeles's really notably high cost of living, the City of Seattle has moved forward with a $15 an hour wage for hotel workers. And the City of San Francisco, in terms of its November ballot initiative, would also be at about $15 per hour. Long Beach hotels, when adjusted for inflation, is about $14.70 per hour. And here in Los Angeles, the current discussion is around $15.37 per hour. Now, similarities with some of those other areas too is that they have no exclusions for other forms of compensation in terms of tips. So they've all seen fit that tipped income should not be taken into consideration when taking a look at what the wage minimum should be. They also don't take into effect kind of health care and bonuses as well. All of them require that paid sick days be allowed for in the different cities that have these wage thresholds set so far. And all of them look to kind of adjust their wages based upon the changes in the CPI over time. Now, some key differences that the LA ordinance would have compared to the ones set up in Seattle, San Francisco, and Long Beach would be that they have different approaches to enforcement. LA, San Francisco, and Long Beach would or do have ordinances that rely upon affected workers to report if they're not getting the required wage, whereas Seattle does not allow for kind of private right of action in order to kind of report that type of difference. Seattle's system is also kind of more expensive to enforce because I think it relies upon kind of field, kind of site visits, things like that. Now, another difference is also the room threshold, or the threshold with regards to types of employers that would be covered. In Long Beach, it would be 100 or more rooms that would be covered. In Seattle, it would be a hotel chain, including franchises, that would be having 500 or more employees, both at that location and others. In San Francisco, It would be initially, I think it was initially going to be set up that it would have to have 10 employees or more, but afterwards that gets kind of wiped out completely. So it's a very low threshold in terms of employment and nothing in regards to rooms. There are a few waivers, hardship waivers, collective bargaining waivers, and others that are kind of mentioned there, and we describe those in a little bit more detail in our letter. Now, in regards to the data that was requested, obviously this is an ordinance that would affect the city of Los Angeles, but the committee had asked for, and I believe it was Council President Wesson had asked for information that was about the what's called the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana Metropolitan Statistical Area. So that basically means LA County plus Orange County. So the numbers I'm going to describe here for now are not just LA City, but it's the entire county of LA plus Orange County. So that metropolitan statistical area, our employment is roughly around, I think in the chart in our report is describing it as about 66,500 employees. That represents about 29% of the state's hotel workers just here in LA County and in Orange County. Similarly, in regards to the same geographic area, the total payroll that's being paid out by hotels in these two counties adds up to about $1.7 billion in most recent years' worth of data. And in terms of wages, there's a significant, I think, difference on the panel and also a difference across different sources of data about what the kind of average wages are amongst different hotel workers. But across Los Angeles and Orange County, what we're reporting is about $26,600 kind of average wage for hotel workers in LA County and Orange County combined. Now, the other things I wanted to cover just to finish up in regards to the ordinance letter that we submitted is in regards to the need for a regional tourism authority. This is not something that we covered directly in the original report that we released back in the fall of last year. But we had a chance to look at it, and we understand it's something that's been talked about. I believe it's in the 2020 Commission's report, and other people in the council actually wondering as to whether or not there may be a regional approach to promoting tourism. So the things that we found out in terms of our initial look within the limited time available for the submitting additional letter was that both Hawaii and New York have kind of interesting comparable examples for kind of large tourism destinations that have set up regional tourism authorities. Hawaii's was set up in 1998. They've had a significant tourism kind of growth before, increasing from about 56 million to 57 million in the period 8 years before 1990 to 1998. But once their tourism authority was established, they had risen from 56 million to 73 million annual tourists. So it's a significant contribution. As to whether or not there's a very direct cause and effect by this regional tourism authority, that's anybody's guess, and there's a lot of kind of questions as to the effect of the recession and other cycles in the economy too. But nonetheless, in New York City, they had an establishment, or excuse me, an authority set up called NYC Go that was created in 2006. This had kind of smaller kind of increase after it was went into effect. The total tourism had increased from 43 to 52 million visitors, but interestingly, international visitors had increased from 6.8 to 7.3 million visitors, and then up to 10.9 million visitors by 2012. Kind of the benefit of this regional authority. And those international visitors may be kind of the ideal target for the regional tourism authority, the ability to kind of bring in some of those tourists that stay longer, spend more, et cetera. So in conclusion, we just want to point out that there's some very significant findings, both of the letter that we submitted and also the earlier report, is that we know that hotel workers, based upon testimony and statistics, are amongst the lowest paid workers in the economy, in the formal sector of the economy. That hotel workers are paid in Los Angeles at rates that are kind of lower, not only than kind of major tourism peers like New York and San Francisco, but also less than the typical wage seen in San Diego and Las Vegas. Also that the LAX ordinance has had a very significant effect, affecting and improving the conditions of workers in that zone. And also, hearing from earlier the elected official from Long Beach, it's very interesting to note that although we haven't studied it, there is a very interesting kind of parallel there that the City of Long Beach is putting forth this new Ordinance 2. It's only 2 years old, so maybe the amount of time gone by is not enough to really allow really statistical insights at this point. But there have been significant signs that the recovery of the tourism industry in Long Beach area is not dramatically different than what we're seeing elsewhere in the state and in the region, that its improvements in terms of occupancy rates and revenue per available room are all on the rise, making kind of steady improvements. So we'd like to wrap up by just saying that we think this is a very actually prudent move by the council to move forward with setting forth a minimum wage. It's a little bit different for an industry that is a little bit different unto itself. It derives most of its income from visitors coming from outside the region and not just kind of local consumers, and therefore kind of deserving of this kind of separate attention. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. It seems like both sides, well, all sides, certainly point to the Century Ordinance. And I just want to get a little more clarification. How has that ordinance impacted revenue per room and daily hotel rates? It sounds like at least two of you are saying, in fact, that the corridors, the hotels in the corridor have prospered because of it. Or are all three of you saying that there has been prosperity in that corridor with the rates?
In answer to that, the Century Boulevard corridor has always had a high occupancy. Its revenues are really dictated by rates, because the occupancy has always been high because they have the ability to handle airline crews and take demand from that other sources of the county don't want because of price. So right now, the LAX corridor is one of the highest occupancy percentage segments in the county. However, at one of the lowest average room rates. We've been asked actually as a firm to study the corridor several times for the city and other factors to try to figure out ways to improve the hotel experience there and the overall stay there. The issue is the hotels just don't have high room rates, so as a consequence, they're not as well maintained as other hotels. They don't give as many services as other hotels. So in terms of the ordinance, basically, it did not hurt their occupancy, and it really didn't hurt their room rate. What it did is it cost jobs. That's just the fact of life. It's as did happen in Long Beach. It's the same issue. The ordinance does not impact occupancy or room rate as much as it impacts the level of services that hotels are willing to give or able to give to their customers, and the number of employees they're willing to hire. And one more factor I should mention, Mr. Price, also, it's in our report, I forgot to mention in my presentation. One of the issues facing the LA hotel industry, as you're well aware, is supply. We have had 0.7% growth in supply in LA County hotels since 1987. Almost one-third of the national average, which is 1.9%. We are really underserved with hotel rooms. The reason we're underserved with hotel rooms is it's economically infeasible, in many cases, to build a new hotel in Los Angeles for a variety of reasons that have been discussed. You were all aware of prior. So that is, and so an ordinance like this also, again, will impact the ability to get additional hotels built, which was already is a challenge to both our employment base and our economy.
Mm-hmm. To back up Bruce's points, that's actually PKF. That's your data, by the way. But you can see the higher occupancy rate for the hotels. You can't see the number there, but right now the occupancy rate around the airport is about 90%, as opposed to 75% for the overall county. RevPAR is actually a little higher. But to that point, there has been wage gains for those working around the airport, for those who still have their job around the airport. But again, on the left-hand side here, you can clearly see the number. The gap between average wages in the hotel industry for the overall county versus around the airport, we're looking at something on the order of $800-900. It doesn't seem to be a huge gap. You may have taken some of the lower income folks and raised them up, but at the same time, they may have shed some of the higher income jobs. Candidly, we can't get inside these hotels. I don't have that specific data, so I don't know exactly what's going on. But that data is about as good as it gets, and it shows very clearly that the actual wage impact hasn't been dramatic, but the jobs impact, I mean, candidly, this shocked me. When we pulled this data and I looked at this, I had my guys go look at it 4 times because I didn't believe it.
And during our study, by the way, we did interview a number of hotel general managers in Long Beach, LAX, as well as a number of regional executives of various hotel chains to understand what they did when each of those ordinances was passed and what they would do if this ordinance was passed. So we're relying really on just interviews with management of hotels in the industry.
And just to make that clear, employment in overall county today relative to where it was back in 2008, you're looking at about 7 to 8% higher. Around the airport, you're looking at about 12% lower. So there's no doubt there's been a substantial jobs impact down there. Some people have been made better off. Some people have been cast back into the labor pool. And that's a trade-off, and it can be a very problematic trade-off.
I have a follow-up question to yours. So this is regarding the Beacon report. So we've heard from several folks that they argue that they can't pass along the extra cost because of the competition nearby or in other cities. In the LAX corridor, for example, I would assume that if my affected hotel is having to raise room prices, then my competition down the street that isn't affected by the ordinance would probably raise their prices as well, even if it's just for profits. Do you have any data in the surrounding area around LAX as to what's happened to the prices in, down the street, in, let's say El Segundo, at the hotels in El Segundo, because that's the nearest competition?
Yeah, the answer is no. We don't collect that data. Again, this is PKF data, but Bruce, you might be able to collect that, right?
Yeah, but we do. We have that data. I don't have it handy to me. But basically, for the most part, the hotels were not able to pass along the price increases because, as I said, the LAX hotels really compete on price because that's the level of product they have both in the corridor at the hotels. So the average room rates at the LAX area hotels have gone up since this ordinance was passed at a slower rate than the county overall.
Well, the only reason I ask this question is because, again, folks that are not in favor of this, they constantly keep coming back, at least in the meetings that I've taken, about they cannot pass this along to the traveler because of the nearby competition, because we're competing against Burbank and El Segundo and what have you. So I'm just curious about what happened to prices there, for example, in LAX.
I don't exactly have the answer to that, but I just argue that the jobs impact would suggest that they decided to cut services. By the way, if I may, I know it's a little off topic, but if I make one clarification, I don't disagree with their data that says 17,000 jobs in the LA City region. That's completely right. The number I gave you, which is 13,500, those are the workers who are employed in hotels which would fall under the statute. It's about 75% of the hotel workforce from our calculation. The other 25% work in hotels with less than 125 rooms. Well, we didn't have rooms per se. We estimated about 100 workers, and that would be the threshold. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's roughly in the range.
Any comments, gentlemen, about the impact on revenues and room rates
in the corridor? Well, we agree with Beacon Economics and PKF that room rates have gone up and wages have gone up, which are both desirable outcomes. The employment change is a complex issue. There's been hotel growth in the room inventory elsewhere in the county and not so much in LAX. And so, in general, in the hotel industry, we've seen some wringing out of the employment levels and nationally, and seeking more productivity per worker. So, what we've saw is seen in Chris's data here is a drop with the recession, some recovery, and a plateau in growth elsewhere. And so what's causing growth elsewhere would be something to look at a little bit. And is that new inventory or is that new jobs in the
we actually did look into that. I didn't put the graph in here, but we looked at jobs per hotel, and there was a substantial decline in jobs per hotel in the airport relative to the rest of the county. So this really was an employment within the hotel thing, not an inventory phenomenon.
And other than JW Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, and LA Live, there's been almost no growth in the LA County hotel industry since 2007.
Well, there are a number of new hotels in the pipeline, but I would also offer our perspective that a showcase industry like hotels that's deeply supported by the public sector and is a face to the world that visits us, ought to sustain the workers that sustain the industry. The entire industry depends on low-wage workers to clean rooms, to put food on tables, to wash dishes, and the workers who do that work ought to be able to live in this city. So even if there's a long-term stabilization in employment rather than some of the growth that might occur with very, very low-wage jobs, we think that trade-off for workers being able to live on what they earn is a good trade-off.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you. Just to clarify one point again, on the second graph there, that's a comparison after the recession of hotel unemployment compared to LA County unemployment, not to hotel employment in LA County, correct?
No, this is hotel employment.
It's hotel
Yeah, it's
employment
hotel to
in the
hotel.
county.
Yeah, it's exactly
Okay,
the
okay.
same industry. It's just hotels.
I got it, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just have a question for our city attorney with respect to some of the issues were brought up with respect to process, and if we are okay moving forward today, given, do we have a city attorney here?
Got one right here.
He's right there.
Okay, can you come up, please?
Well, you've also got one right here.
Okay, right here, there you are, I'm looking over there. I just want to make sure there were some legal issues brought up today about process and us moving forward today by one of the speakers, Paul Rohrer from Loeb & Loeb. I just want to make sure that we are
Well, you know, I've
okay moving forward today.
I've read the Loeb & Loeb report. I would say that anything that we would address there should, you know, to be, we should talk about discussing in closed session as far as the potential threats of litigation, if that's,
Okay.
if that's what you're referring to. I don't think there's any, this meeting was properly agendized, and,
Okay.
and I don't think there's any problem with hearing the matter today.
Okay, well, I don't want to speak to the threat of litigation. I just want to speak to, on the general terms, have we moved forward according to all rules and regulations for us to move forward today?
Good afternoon, council members. David Michelson with the City Attorney's Office. With me is my colleague Valerie Flores. We're pleased to be with you here today. The ordinance that the City Attorney's Office drafted pursuant to the request in the City Council motion was transmitted late last week and is properly before you. We believe in the City Attorney's Office that the ordinance as drafted is legally sound and provides you, as the policymakers at the city, the opportunity to make policy decisions as to whether to adopt the ordinance.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much. My only other point, Mr. Chairman, is that, you know, throughout the discussion, I wanted to state that I support us providing a living wage for hotel workers so that we not only provide their families a livable wage, but also stimulate the economy by having more spending in our local economy. But in that vein, we have a region in the city that is undergoing transformation that is now living up to more potential after decades of neglect. And that is really our economic hub of downtown Los Angeles, where 500,000 people come to work each and every day. And it is going through tremendous transformation to continue to provide the type of economic opportunity and additional spending that will stimulate the economy and help everyone in the city of Los Angeles. Now, for me, I support moving forward with living wage, but I also have to balance that with any impact they may have on the revitalization of downtown. And currently, with the need for more hotel rooms in downtown, that has been studied and recommended that we do everything and anything possible to provide more hotel rooms to continue that economic activity. We also want to ensure that this does not negatively impact that. And the opportunities to get new hotels is really around historic structures and buildings. Many buildings have been sitting vacant for decades, and we want to put back to use. Many of these buildings are being looked upon as potential boutique hotels that could not only provide jobs, put those buildings back to use, but also preserve our history. We don't want someone to look at those buildings and say, I can't make any use of these buildings, we're just going to demolish them. We want to preserve those buildings and preserve our history. So, Mr. Chair, with the concurrence of my colleagues, I would like to ask that if this moves forward, that we amend this to ask that a study be conducted with the results given back to this committee by July 1st of 2015 for us to examine the feasibility of possibly exempting adaptively reused buildings. Now, up to date, there's only been 2 in downtown. One is the Ace Hotel, and the other is the Standard Hotel, which I think has brought tremendous new economic activity in downtown Los Angeles. And if I could read what the motion will be, so I could read it into the record, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I'm asking for July 1, 2015 is that before the implementation date, this will give us some time to review this to see if it's at all possible. So let me read the language into the record. So we had asked that the CLA and CAO work with the Economic Development Department to provide a report back by July 1, 2015 that will provide an analysis on the economic impact of historic preservation and reuse of buildings and the economic impact of the presence of vacant older buildings and otherwise revitalizing downtown urban environment, analyze the risk factors and return on investment for adaptive reuse versus new construction hotel projects, and finally, compare the cost of the per square foot price of delivering comparable adaptive reuse and new construction hotels in downtown Los Angeles and Southern California, including but not limited to, 1, the cost of land and building acquisition compared with just land or tear down buildings, 2, seismic upgrades, 3, retrofit requirements, 4, building and health code requirements, 5, fire life safety systems, 6, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, 7, infrastructure upgrades, 8, as well as the planning, permitting, and professional service costs associated with architects, designers, and consultants, which have very different requirements in adaptive reuse than new construction, and finally, economies of scale achieved with new construction versus adaptive reuse. I got very specific because sometimes when we ask for these report backs, we are not given exactly the type of information we requested. So again, I'm supportive of us moving forward on the living wage, but at the same time, if we could balance the need to preserve our historic structures and provide for more economic activity in downtown, I think will go hand in hand with the overall purpose and goal of providing a living wage for hotel workers.
All right, thank you, Councilman, for your comments. Councilwoman Martinez.
Are we done with the panel?
Unless you got additional questions, yes.
They're back?
We can bring them back for some additional questions.
Sorry? I do have a question. I think it's, are you with PKF? It was based on development, so I think I've already asked my question about passing on the cost to the traveler or the tourist when they make a hotel reservation, but I was more curious about the development. So the other part of this has also been the downward pressure on development within the city, and what this would do to potential hotel development, particularly in downtown. So, like, would this have an effect on larger projects, like, for example, the Wilshire Grand, who already has a PLA in place, or
Probably not.
Okay. Larger hotels as well.
The larger hotels being built downtown, for the most part, are being built with a development agreement with the city, and that development agreement does basically require the hotel to be a union hotel, as far as I know, as far as I understand. So this wouldn't impact that kind of development. It would change the factor. It would be more, the impact on development would be more in hotels that would not have a development agreement with the city or would not be applying for a TOT subsidy.
And the boutique hotels that perhaps are in between that 100 and 150 room threshold would have an impact on those?
Not on the ones that would be under the threshold. If they wouldn't be covered, they would not be covered. But there is potential development of boutique hotels of above 150 rooms. And frankly, what it might do is cause the developer to say, well, rather than build 170 rooms, I'll build 150 or 145 or something like that. So that would be the probably the most logical outcome would be just reduce the room count until under 150 if you're close to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all my questions I had for the panel. I don't know if, before they leave, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Any questions?
Appears no other at this time. No.
You didn't? I'd like to make an amendment.
Why don't you
I
go
think
forward?
we're done with.
Yes.
At least I'm done with my questions to the panel.
Okay.
Amendment.
But there's two things that I feel really strongly about supporting the hotel living wage ordinance. One of them is the majority of the hotel industry employees are women of color. This is about 43% of them live, below the poverty line and sometimes have to take 1 or 2 extra jobs just to be able to make ends meet. And the second reason is that, I feel really strongly about the fact that you could increase wages by boosting the local economy and passing the spending through our travelers and our tourism that visit our city. So it wouldn't necessarily be something that we would charge or would have an effect on our own LA residents. So those are one of the 2 reasons. And, the other thing, one of the things that was mentioned in your report, the Beacon report, is it's both really telling and really sad, the fact that you point to the high percentage of our workforce population being low-wage workers in the city. I mean, that to me is so telling and so sad at the same time. It's just...
Well, if I may, it's really a legacy of the basically broken immigration policy at the federal level. I mean, it's nothing to do with Los Angeles, but, LA being over 100 miles from the border, we have been
But this is our reality. I mean, this is the reality of the fact is most of our workforce is lower skilled workers. And we need to make sure that the people who service our tourists that visit our city, that the people that service them don't have to, clock out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and run to their second job, that they're able to sustain their families on a reasonable wage and they're able to spend time raising their kids. I mean, that I would hope everybody agrees with me on.
As I agree with you. I just worry about the jobs impact.
My only amendment, Mr. Chair, would be that the motion, that I make a motion that the ordinance to amend, make an amendment to effect that the ordinance apply only to hotels with more than 150 rooms. I know we talked about 125 being the room threshold. I would actually would amend that to move it up to 150.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, again, gentlemen, for your comments and for being here today. I want to thank everyone for your participation in this healthy discussion, healthy, robust discussion. Not only the economists who participated, but certainly the community that has weighed in. And again, I want to thank you all for being here today. I know that many of you have shared your concerns about the policy, and I want to address some of these concerns head on. And while I might not change your mind, I do want to dispute the idea that this policy has not been carefully studied or crafted. In fact, we've had 6 reports on the policy from 4 different economists over the course of nearly 8 months. One of the main arguments in opposition to this plan is that it targets one industry. Well, in fact, it does target the hotel industry that's been a target for some time. Not only because the city set a precedent by implementing and proving in court that the city has a right to raise wages at LAX, but the industry has also been targeted for hundreds of millions of dollars in financial assistance in the form of tax breaks and benefits. In the LA Times this past April, it reported on 4 hotel developments that received up to $500 million in tax breaks over the life of their agreements. So beyond what the city does in terms of investing in public infrastructure, transportation, and tourism, we're also actively creating incentives that single out the hotel industry. And I think we do that in a good way. And we plan to continue to create incentives for hotel developers. We know that more rooms are going to be needed, and we want the convention, the convention bureau and the convention center in our city to be competitive, obviously, in that effort. And so we've been studying a city-wide hotel incentive package that is going to be coming, in fact, before this committee again. This program would create a system to give hotel financial incentives targeting high-need areas. And so, again, we want to work collaboratively with the industry in that regard. At the end of the day, none of the studies that we've seen really reach a consensus. You get an expert that can agree on whatever your interest is. That's why we as policymakers have to ultimately make a choice based on our principles and our beliefs and what's right for the city and what's right for the working families in our city. I know that for me the path is clear. I represent a district where most of the families are struggling and the income barely reaches $26,000 a year for a family. $26,000 a year for a family, frequently a family of 4 or 5, sometimes more. a region of the city where most children have little or no access to green space to run and play. It's where many of my constituents fail to receive even basic services, like getting the streets clean, the alleys clean, the access to high-performing schools. While our studies may disagree on the exact number of people who will benefit from the proposal, what we do know is that thousands of hardworking men and women will be better off if we pass this policy of an increased minimum wage. As an elected official, if you can make the life for even one resident better, you're doing a job. If I can make life better for one child, because his mom and dad now make enough salary so they don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs, and will be able to help with homework and attend parent meetings, I think that I'm doing my job. And again, sometimes you need to do just what you feel is right. And for me, this is right. My commitment to the hotel industry today is to continue working with you to find ways to ensure development in our city. I'm going to continue to be a champion for incentives that are targeted to projects that can make a difference. LA is on the rise, and I know that all of you know that can appreciate that because we see business rising. We're going to continue to see our tourism grow, and the hotel industry will grow and be a part and a real beneficiary of that growth. And I think collectively this committee wants that to be the outcome and the objective of our efforts. But without further ado, I'd like to move approval of the ordinance as amended by Councilwoman Martinez, as well as to report back on the adaptive reuse opportunities as per Councilman Weezar's request. I'll entertain a second on the amended motion and your request for...
Sure, second. Yeah.
There's been a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you, members. This meeting is adjourned.